As we consider this text today, I'd like us to just think for a few minutes about how the negative experiences that we have in life could, in fact, have the possibility of having a positive impact upon us. How is it that we can experience something negatively and still come out shining and be on track with God? You know, years ago, I used to coach all my kids in sports. I got 4 boys, so we spent all Saturdays on the athletic fields and then weekdays as well. And there's this one hotshot kid. He was smart. He was tremendously kind, nice kid. Went to church with my kids, went to school. We were in and out of one another's houses. And this kid was an amazing athlete. Hotshot could do anything. He had such great agility and strength and speed and power. There wasn't anything that could get out of the left field infield when he was playing shortstop. He would just stop any ball. If he was in center field, he could catch any ball in the outfield. This kid was an amazing soccer player. He could turn a hat trick in any soccer game that you'd want him to. And he was just so agile and capable. But the thing he loved most was skateboarding. And he would go skateboarding, and he could go towards a bench, and he'd jump off his skateboard, send the board underneath the bench, and land on the skateboard on the other side. Then he'd come up to another bench, and he would pick the skateboard up with his feet as if it was glued to the bottom of his feet, and he'd land on the other side. And then he'd come up to another bench, and he'd jump over the bench, and he would take the skateboard, and it would go 360 this way and 360 this way, and then he would land on it when he got on the other side. You know, there's another skateboarder that skateboarded with him. He's another buddy of my son's. He started a company down in San Diego. We just went to their 6th anniversary yesterday. He started this company, and in 3 years, he sold the company for $80 million. But that's not Hotshot. Hotshot was even better than little Mikey. Hotshot was the best athlete I'd ever seen. And Hotshot started drinking, and he started smoking pot, and he started shooting up and got addicted to heroin and ended up with all his drug use and related activity going to prison. And this was like the worst thing in his life. And his parents were so distressed. And yet, if you talk to that family now, they'll say, prison was the best thing for him. It saved his life. It turned him around, and it was like a forced rehab program, and he got on the right track. And he met some good law enforcement officers along the way, which was to his benefit. And he's doing a lot better. So he's now seeing that something that bad that happened to him actually is working for good. I'd like you to think about your own life for a few moments today. How is it that we could experience something negative in our life, and it could actually be used for good? We see this over and over again in the book of Acts, as Luke describes the history of the early church. Repeatedly, we're told that there is resistance to the gospel of Jesus Christ, and yet at every turn, good things happen as a result. And we see this particularly with the life of Paul. Paul is headed down one road on the road to Damascus. And he has this legalistic attitude towards religion that is filled with rituals and with obligations, and somehow his religiosity has informed him to be better than others and to find himself angry and bigoted and hostile and violent. And he was going down the wrong path, and Jesus got a hold of him on the road to Damascus, and he changed his direction. And then repeatedly, over and over again in Paul's life, he goes on a mission trip. And when he goes on this one mission trip, his life turned around. He goes to share about the grace of God, the love of God, the forgiveness of the sins in our life. He goes to tell people about the difference that God's love makes in society. And as he presents this message, people keep on opposing him. But every time he's opposed, people hear the good news and they respond to the message of Jesus over and over and over again. But you might say one of the things that happens in Paul's life is he kind of is a living illustration of, you know, the old statement, how does it go? No good deed goes unpunished. You know, I think he's kind of a living example of that, because every time he's doing something good and for God, he winds up having great resistance and opposition and suffering as a result. And here he comes to the end of his second mission trip, and finally God says, okay, I'm giving you a year and a half. Nothing bad's going to happen. You know, and things just take off in wonderful ways. And you know that statement of nothing, you know, no good deed goes unpunished. I think there's a corollary to that line. It's like the more good you do, the more resistance you have. Have you noticed that? I was at the mayor's prayer breakfast with Chief Catron this past Thursday morning, and I was. Many of you were there. Thank you for coming together for that. We had a lot of people from First Congregational Church, and I was carrying 2 cups of coffee with me, and Mayor Paul Foster said, "Wow, Steve, you really need your coffee in the morning." And I said, "No, actually, I'm serving this at the table. This is the kind of service that I really like, because when I serve like this, people actually say thank you, Mr. Mayor." And so oftentimes in the service, you know, that's really important, people don't take time to say thank you. And that's why we want you here today, to say thank you to you for your service. You're doing important stuff. And the more important stuff that you do as a leader in the church or in the community or at school or wherever, the more resistance we sometimes tend to get. And the question becomes then, why try? Why love Jesus? Why serve Jesus? Why make all the efforts to do good and to work for God? Why even put yourself through it? And I would suggest the reason is because the direction we're on is the right direction. And the people that we're with are the right ones to be going with. And if you look at Paul, he was going in a bad direction, but his life was turned around and it was changed in the right direction. And when you're going in the right direction and you're on a good mission that God has given to you, you'll give your life for that. You'll even die for that. And Paul was willing to do it. And if you look at the text today and you look at all the message of Acts, the people that he was really, God gave him a rich assortment of people to support him. And it's very interesting because every time he'd have opposition, he'd wind up developing some kind of relationship with a leader. Remember on Cyprus, he was confronted by Sergius Justus on Cyprus, and Sergius became a Christian. Crispus becomes a Christian. Here he comes before Gallio, who's actually the brother of Seneca, the Roman poet and philosopher. And so every time he has resistance, Paul winds up meeting new, interesting people. And some of them come to faith in Jesus Christ. You know, this past week I was listening to a lady who was a flight attendant, and she talked about her own job and some of the stresses she had on her job. And she said, you know, when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a flight attendant. And I really had this vision of life that I wanted to be a part of something bigger than myself, and I wanted to be connected to people. And when somebody told me that I could do that as a flight attendant, I automatically signed up for flight attendant school. And she said 6 weeks after she applied, she was in flight attendant school, and the CEO of the company came to their school, and he said to them, "You all were chosen because you have a good smile, and you're kind." He says, "We can teach you all the rest, but your mother taught you how to smile and be kind, and we are into customer service." And so she was really pleased to be a flight attendant. And when she started working as a flight attendant, she felt like this was really her fulfilling her personal mission in life. And then she started meeting the people that fly. And she said, "They're awful." People get into the plane and they put their bag in row 3 when they're really seated in row 37. They come in with bags that are too big. You ask them to sit down and they don't sit down, or they argue with you. It's just so frustrating. She says, and the thing they don't tell you is when you're a flight attendant, you get these bruises on the bottom of your feet. You're just constantly pounding. You're working and you get shoulder injuries, and it's really a tough job. And she said, and you know, when you are receiving trash from all their tables, you're getting exposed to germs like a nursery school teacher. And people start to get cynical. People will start saying like, "Sir, you're trash," with a double message, right? Or, "Ma'am, your whole family's trash." And you start feeling very cynical about it. She said one time somebody on her plane had a heart attack, and they were in the aisle, and she was working on this person, and they had to defibrillate her out, and they had to revive this person, and she had oxygen on his mouth, and there was a person that kept on tugging at her sleeve that was in the seat beside her, tugging and tugging and tugging and tugging, and she kept ignoring and ignoring and ignoring, and finally she realizes, maybe they want to tell me something. Maybe they want to tell me something that will help her. Maybe they want to give me some medicine that they know this person needs. And so she turned and said, "Yes, what is it?" And she said, "My coffee is cold." She said, "People are awful." Any people here? She said one time after 9/11, you know, the whole country was really on edge during 9/11. And this one guy gets on the plane and he's carrying a bag. It's just like a garbage bag. And he gets on the plane and he puts it up in the storage, and then he keeps on standing up. He stands by the bathroom, he looks in at this bag. And the seat sign was on, "Please do not stand," seatbelts fastened. And he just wouldn't fasten his seatbelt. And then she says, "You just got to take your seat." And he said, "I'm sorry. When the Twin Towers came down, my son was a first responder, and he perished. And this is his uniform from his locker, his only uniform left, and they gave it to me. And I'm taking it back home with me." And she said, she realized what she went into flight attending for. It was to help people and to connect with something bigger than herself. And so now when she's picking up the trash from people, she says, "Thank you." But she means it. She says, "Thank you for these skies around me. Thank you for the earth beneath us. Thank you for the people in my life that I have this life to share with. Thank you for all the blessings that are ours." And I would say, amen, and thank you.